the Porsche Sport Podcast. Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup, Formula E, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, 24-hour series, Porsche Carrera Cup, Endurance Motorsports, British GT, Porsche Club Great Britain, Sim Racing. For more information, visit www.PorscheSport.com. Porsche Sport Podcast.
Hello race fans, and welcome to the first episode of the brand new Porsche Sport podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy this episode. My name's Peter Mackay, and I'm here to take you through all of this week's Porsche racing news and more with our producer this week, Luke Holroyd, who is the super sub for my usual co-host, Kat Impey, who cannot be here this week. But Luke, welcome to the programme. I'm looking forward to this, talking about Porsches and racing. That's what gets my engine revving anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah, great to be here, Peter, and thank you for the introduction. It's been a busy week for Porsche fans. We've got a lot to cover in this episode. For the first one, we've set the bar high, but I think we can get through it. And as you said, there's some interesting stories to go for.
There certainly is, and we'll get right into it because, as you say, with Porsche, of course, Porsche is a brand that is absolutely steeped in motorsport ever since its very first inception. Of course, more outright wins at the Le Mans 24 Hours than any other brand, and more class wins at Le Mans 24 Hours than any other brand. 19 outright wins and 108 class wins at the Le Mans 24 Hours for Porsche. So Porsche and motorsport go together hand in hand. And Porsche were, a little bit of a home fixture for them. First of all, we're going to talk about the NLS. Now, if you're not sure what NLS is, this is, you might remember the old VLN series, which is a racing series which is held exclusively at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And, the variety of machinery on show at the Nürburgring Nordschleife in these NLS races is incredible. You've got the cream of the crop factory cars from Mercedes, from Ferrari, BMW, and of course Porsche. But it's not unusual to see Renault Clios. We saw some of them out at the weekend. We saw an Opel Manta, believe it or not, and all sorts of things in between as well. But we're going to focus on the sharp end of the field, the SP9 Pro class, which is GT3 cars with all professional drivers at the wheel. Now, due to the coronavirus pandemic, obviously motorsport has really been rocked to its core, like pretty much every sport this year. So rescheduling has been the name of the game for many racing series. However, the NLS have been really proactive and have been able to get racing back going again. And we've already had one race weekend already a couple of weeks ago where BMW took the victory. And this weekend, we actually had two races, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. It was Mercedes who were dominant in those races. Mercedes actually claiming the victory in both races, but in slightly controversial circumstances in race two. Unfortunately for Porsche, the 911 GT3R was very much off the pace throughout the weekend. Now, to make you aware, the GT3 category, sports car category, you have an extraordinary number of varieties of vehicle taking part in that category. So you have, of course, the Porsche 911 GT3R, which has its normally aspirated flat six engine mounted in the very rear of the car. But then you have the Mercedes, which is a big 6.3 litre naturally aspirated engine mounted in the front of the car. Then you've got the Audi R8, which is a 5.2 litre V10 mounted in the middle. And you've got the Ferrari, which is a twin turbo mid-engine, and so on. You even get Bentleys as well in GT3. Now, of course, these cars are all very, very different in their road trim. So when they're made into a racing car, those differences do actually carry over. So global GT3 racing is basically governed by something called balance of performance. You might hear it being referred to as BOP. That's often what people in the know will call it, or BOP, as some people call it as well. And what that means is that basically the organisers basically try to level the playing field of each car to try and ensure really close competition, and also encourage as many manufacturers to come to the table with their car. And in general, the GT3 category worldwide has been a roaring success, with nearly 20 factories homologating a GT3 car. So what they do is to ensure the parity in performance is that, for example, they can add weight. If a car is going too quickly, they can add weight to it, or close the air restrictor down, or reduce turbo boost. Or if the car is not going quick enough, they'll do the opposite. In theory, it's a fantastic idea, and in most of the time it does work. However, there are always winners and losers, as is always the case in motorsport. And sometimes the balance of performance can be open to a little bit of fun and games, again, as has always been the case in motorsport. So you do see teams who perhaps hide their pace back, particularly in endurance racing. You see it a lot in 24-hour racing, where in testing and qualifying, where qualifying is not so important for a 24-hour race, you'll see teams perhaps holding back and running well within their own pace, and then deploying all of their pace in the race and kind of surprising the field. So you don't want to show your hand too early and have a balance of performance penalty applied. We certainly saw that last year at Le Mans, when Aston Martin put their car on pole position and then were absolutely nowhere in the race because they'd been given a balance of performance adjustment before the race because of that pole position pace. So at the Nürburgring, that was certainly at play at the weekend. We saw it was very much the front engine cars, the Mercedes and the BMW M6, which were utterly dominant throughout the weekend. And the Porsches were very much struggling as well. From Porsche, we saw a number of the usual teams. We saw the Frikadelli car. So if you've ever seen at the Nürburgring the white and red machine with the big pint of beer on the side of it, that's the Frikadelli car. Also, the well-known team Falcon Tyre had 2 cars out there as well. Mackay Racing, the green and yellow machine, they were there with their 911. KCMG and Huber Motorsport. So in race 1, the podium, well, it was number 16 Team HRT Mercedes who took the win ahead of the Walkenhorst BMW M6 and another Mercedes, the Team GetSpeed Mercedes, in third. For Porsche, the highest finisher in the race, in the first race, was the number 31 Frikadelli car of Felipe Fernandez-Laser, Michael Christensen and Kevin Estre. And we need to talk about quick Kevin Estre, because for me, Kevin Estre is the fastest driver in the world around the Nürburgring Nordschleife in particular. If you've ever seen the Porsche Endurance documentary, which you can find for free on YouTube, it's absolutely excellent. And there's some amazing footage of Kevin driving at the Nürburgring, and he's just in another planet. Now, Kevin and his lovely wife Caroline actually had their first child. They had a little boy, Tommy, a couple of days ago. So congratulations to Kevin and Caroline. But Kevin had to go away up. They live in Austria, over in the west of Austria, in a place called Dornbirn. And Kevin had to, well, duty called. He had to get up to the Nürburgring in Germany to go and do his job. And Kevin only took part in the Saturday race. He went home after the race on Saturday and left his colleagues to it for the race on Sunday. And actually, Kevin actually posted on his Instagram page his progress driving home to Austria at the wheel of his company car, a Cayenne Turbo S Hybrid. And he showed a picture of his trip computer. And let's just say his average speed was incredibly high, let's just say. I won't reveal what it was, but German autobahns for you. But Kevin, obviously very keen to get back and see his new son Tommy and his lovely wife Caroline. But he was last into the car in the 4-hour race on Saturday and really dragged that car up to a 6th place finish, top Porsche. And without Kevin's mega stint at the end there, that car would not have finished up as highly as it did. In 8th place was the familiar Mackay Racing machine, who have won the Nürburgring 24-hour on 6 occasions. The number 911 machine, driven by Lars Kern, Matteo Jaminet and Julian Andler coming in 8th. And 10th was the number 18 KCMG machine of Romain Dumas, Dennis Olsen and Patrick Pilet. So some very familiar Porsche factory drivers there. So that gives you an idea just how important racing at the Nürburgring in the NLS series is to Porsche, because most of the names I've just read out there, they are fully paid up Porsche factory drivers. So they're employed directly by Porsche AG. Effectively, they are the ultimate customer service assistants, if you like, because teams like Fricadelli, Manthey, KCMG, they will buy a car from Porsche and take it racing. And in return, Porsche will help them by sending their factory drivers to help drive the car. So, like you say, if you're a Porsche factory driver, you are the ultimate expression of a customer service assistant. In race 2, the German stronghold on the podium, on the top step of the podium, was actually temporarily broken, because very, very rarely at the Nürburgring do we see a non-German manufacturer winning the race. But that's exactly what we saw to begin with in race 2, with the Octane 126 Ferrari 488 actually winning the race on the road by just 0.7 seconds after 4 hours of racing. Incredible. From the Team HRT Mercedes. But the Ferrari was later disqualified for a tyre infringement, although it had won on the road, disqualified from the race. And that must have really stung, because the Ferrari GT3 car is reportedly the most expensive GT3 car to run. And for a lap of the Nürburgring Nordschleife, that car will reportedly cost over €1,000 a lap to run at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. So compared to other cars, which will be about half that. So it's a seriously expensive car to run. So after that win, that must have really had to have that taken off them. So the final result in the end was the Team HRT Mercedes completing the double over the weekend in first place, with the Audi Sport car, the number 32, in second, and the Walkenhorst BMW in third. For Porsche, well, it was an even worse day than Saturday. The top Porsche coming in only in 8th place. That was the number 18 KCMG car of Romain Dumas, Patrick Pilet and Dennis Olsen. The rest of the field, and this probably gives a good indication of where the balance of performance was, because 13th place all the way down to 18th place were all Porsches. So that tells you something, that normally if you see one particular car doing particularly well or particularly badly, that can come down to lots of factors. It can come down to the way the car is set up by the team, the age of the vehicle, the drivers in it, lots of different things can come into it. But when you see one manufacturer perhaps with all of their cars at the front, or one manufacturer with all of their cars at the back, that indicates that something is out of place with the balance of performance. So I would happily say that there's something needs to happen with the balance of performance in the NLS series, because with Porsche going from 13th all the way back to 18th, well, that does tell you quite a big story. In 13th, we had the Manthey racing car. 14th and 15th were the two Falcon tyre machines. 16th, the Huber Motorsport. 17th, KCMG. And 18th, the Fricadelli car, which, of course, came in 6th place on the Saturday. So not the ideal scenario for Porsche this year so far in the NLS, but hopefully they'll get a little bit of a respite from that with those really quick BMWs and Mercedes as well. Now, Luke, you were watching while all that was going on over at the Nürburgring, over in Italy at Monza. They were having a 12-hour race, the 12 hours of Monza. You were watching that. Tell us what happened there.
Yeah, so as I said, a very busy weekend and especially for endurance fans as well. So yeah, the 12 hours of Monza, which was Herbert Motorsport Porsches who finally took the win on that, the Hankook Creventic series. And I have to say to the guys at Hankook and the 24-hour series, they've done a brilliant job in getting racing back. A few weeks ago, we had the 24 hours of Portimao, and that was one of the first major motorsport events that had come back. Granted, the numbers a little bit low that you would expect in terms of entries, but they've done a fantastic job to get motorsport back, especially endurance racing. So we had the 12 hours of Monza. A little bit different if you're new to endurance racing. They'd split the the event into two. So you had 4 hours on the Friday, and then they had to stop. The cars went into a parc fermé for noise issues. You're not allowed to run at Monza after, I think, 7 p.m. And then they continued on the Saturday for the final 6 hours, and it was fairly dramatic. Actually, there's some big events. There was a few classes. So you've got the GT3 class, you've got the GTX class, you've got a 991 class, which there was 2 entries, both Porsche, so there was guaranteed to win that as long as they crossed the line at the end. We had a GT4 class, which there was just one BMW that entered that, and then you had your TCRs and your TCXs. So there's a lot of grids there, a lot of cars that make for some interesting racing, some tight overtakes. But as I said, it was Porsche Motorsport who took the win in Portimao, finally crossed the line in first, second, and third. But that's not all the story. There was in terms of overall lead, you did have the Renault RS01 taking the first 16 laps, and then that retired after suffering engine failure. And then you had a KTM GTX concept car, which led most of the race, especially into the evening when we kind of went into parc fermé. And then they suffered from electrical problems, which then put Porsche back up onto the final podium spots. And we had some very strange weather as well. It looked like a brilliant day on the Friday, and then the Saturday afternoon, glorious sunshine, turned to, I would almost say, tornado-like weather. The rainstorms came. A lot of the cars tried to stay out on slicks, came in, put on the wet tyres, and then it got to a point where there was actually trees, there was marshal posts all across the circuit. There was cars actually stopping on the back straight as there was a tree in the middle of the circuit. So they obviously had to stop the race at that point, and they don't have much luck at the minute with the 24-hour series. I know it was the last Dubai 24-hour they had to stop due to terrible weather. But we got going again, and as I mentioned, it was Porsche who took the win there. So Porsche Motorsport are looking very strong in that series, in the GT3 class, and as I mentioned, in the 991 class, the speed lover Porsches both Porsches home, so they got a nice 1-2 on that as well. But all in all, it was a very good watch. And again, as I mentioned to the guys, they've done very well to put on endurance racing this soon after we've gone down a worldwide lockdown. They've got more racing to come. They've actually got a virtual race coming up, and if I check the dates on that, so there's the 12 Hours of Barcelona Esports, which is on the 22nd of August. And as we both know, Peter, with the endurance racing, a lot of the drivers who compete in the real endurance events will be racing in the virtual one as well. And then we go back to real life racing, which will go back to Barcelona in the real world on the 5th and 6th of September. So I look forward to watching that, and hopefully Porsche will continue that dominance through the series.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. And I have to echo your sentiments about Creventic, the organisation based just outside Nijmegen in Holland. And you wouldn't believe it, there is a whiskey festival called Maltstock, which is in that town, which is just about 5 minutes down the road from where their office is. But you're absolutely right. They've done a great job to get people out on track. And they also take a very refreshing attitude to their motorsport as well, because they if you've got a race car, they'll find you a class for it, and they're mainly about getting people out on track and competing, and that is very, very refreshing, because that is a lot of the time where a lot of racing programs or racing teams kind of fall down, is when they've effectively run out of places where they can efficiently go and race, and particularly in the current environment, you really have to take your hat off to them. So well done to them. Speaking of organisations which get cars out on track, over in the United States, well, that's been the job of the SRO organisation. SRO is not necessarily a household name, but some of the events that they organise are. They're the organiser of the 12 Hours of Bathurst, and most famously the 24 Hours of Spa. So they basically, if you've maybe heard of the Blancpain series, it's no longer called the Blancpain series, but that's SRO who are behind that, and they're been one of the real leaders in GT racing for a couple of decades now. And SRO stands for Stefan Rattel Organisation, named after the main man behind that organisation. And over in America, they have very much a thriving series called the GT World Challenge America, and they had the restart of their season at the weekend at the incredible VIR circuit. Virginia International Raceway, to me, is one of the finest motor racing facilities anywhere on the planet. And if you've never heard of it, there is a fantastic feature episode about it on Amazon Prime right now. So if you have Amazon Prime, get on to there, and there's an episode on a program called Dinner with Racers, which talks all about the history of the track and what they do with it now. And it's a really incredible enterprise. The circuit itself was constructed and opened all the way back in 1957, and it was built by two local farmers, the Strickland brothers. And they owned a very large expanse of land, and they decided to build a racetrack there. And they were quite wealthy farmers at the time. They were one of the wealthiest dairy farming families at the time. And because they were quite wealthy, they owned a Mercedes Gullwing 300 SL. And what they did was they basically drove around their farmland in this 300 SL and threw bags out the window to mark where they wanted the racetrack to be. And basically it followed the curvature of the land, and the result was an amazing contoured, beautiful flowing circuit. And for our British viewers, if you can imagine Oulton Park being doubled in size, you're getting somewhere close to what the kind of layout of the track is like. But actually, the track in its original guise had quite a short life. It actually stopped in the late 1970s and was closed, not because it wasn't successful. In fact, it was almost a victim of its own success, because in the 60s, it became a real hotspot for college students to go and watch the racing. And there was a number of college and universities that were in the local area. And basically, they would all go to Spectator Hill and have a good old party. And actually, the party got so out of control that they actually had to close the circuit. Now, the circuit has got so much history as well. It's actually very close to the town of Danville, which is home to a gentleman called Wendell Scott, who you might have seen his name come up in the news in the last couple of weeks, because Wendell Scott was the first ever African-American NASCAR winner. Now, bearing in mind that Danville was actually the last capital of the Confederacy in America. So he grew up in a pretty difficult area for an African-American man, but he was an incredible driver and competed at the very highest level in stock car racing in NASCAR. And he was from Danville, just down the road from VIR. Now, one guy who's, well, probably the most famous man ever to drive a Porsche was Paul Newman, the very famous actor. And he actually won his class at Le Mans in a Porsche. And he said, this is one quote that he said about VIR. He said, "If there's a heaven on earth, it's VIR." He loved it. And Porsche have, like they do at many circuits, have an amazing heritage at VIR. In fact, the first ever IMSA GT race at VIR was back in 1971 and was won by Peter Gregg and Hurley Haywood in a Porsche 9146 GT. So this facility is incredibly popular in America. You see all kinds of series going there. IMSA go there once a year. Of course, GT World Challenge as well. And a lot of the junior single-seater categories in America go there as well. And the layout is amazing. If you've ever played iRacing or Forza Motorsport, it's on there as well. So go and check it out. So the main event for the GT World Challenge paddock is the GT3 class, as it is in many sports car racing paddocks. And the GT3 class had two races at the weekend at VIR. And, well, another case of a little bit of balance of performance being a little bit out of kilter, with the Acura NSX of Racers Edge Motorsports being utterly dominant. Closely followed behind them were the two DXDT Mercedes AMG GT3s. But I want to talk about the sole Porsche 911 GT3 that was in that that was in that particular race, because the format for World Challenge is very much a pro-am format. So you have one amateur driver, usually a wealthy business person, who is paying for basically the entire project, and he or she will employ a professional driver to race along beside them. And basically they'll take the race for 90 minutes and they do about half of the driving each. Now, in the Wright Motorsports Porsche, and Wright Motorsports a very, very, very important team in North America for Porsche, the Wright Motorsports Porsche was driven by the amateur driver, Dr. Fred Purdad, and a young gentleman called Max Root. And I want to talk about young Max because Max is a driver who is very much on the radar of Porsche themselves, and he currently races in the American GT3 Cup, which goes around with the IMSA paddock. And from his 44 races, he's been on the podium 31 times and has also won the IMSA Hurley Haywood Scholarship. And of course, Hurley Haywood, a Porsche legend with 3 Porsche Le Mans wins. And Max is doing a grand old job, and his 2 stints behind the wheel over the weekend were, well, they were absolutely flawless, to be honest. He drove really, really well, and his gentleman driver, who he races with, Dr. Fred Purdad, who's the co-founder of the Texas Liver Institute, is actually kind of mentoring Max. Obviously, he's a sponsor, but mentoring him as well and helping him along with his business degree at university as well. So we need to have a look out. We need to keep an eye out for young Max in that over in the United States. Now, however, their results were not quite what they deserved, because unfortunately, very, very rarely for Porsche, we actually had 2 mechanical failures. In race 1, they had to retire due to a suspension failure, reportedly from the large curbs at VIR, causing a little bit of problem there. And in the second race, they had a mechanical failure either from an engine or electrical, which is something you just very, very rarely see with a 911 GT3. So for GT3, it wasn't successful for Porsche this time around. In GT4, it absolutely was. In the first race of the weekend in the GT4 Sprint class, Spencer Pumpelly took his TRG 718 GT4 Cayman to a dominant victory, and Spencer's had a lot of success in Porsches. He's won the Watkins 6 Hours of the Glen twice, both in Porsches. He's won Petit Le Mans twice for Park Place Porsche and Flying Lizard, and also won the 2006 Rolex 24 in class as well. So he's got an incredible amount of experience, and, well, all of that was on show at the weekend. And actually Spencer's mum and dad actually met one another while partying at VIR as well. So that circuit has a place close to his heart as well. In the Sprint X Pro-Am class, Matt Travis and Jason Hart, they took the win in their NOLA Sport GT4 Cayman. And in the second Sprint Pro race, Spencer Pumpelly was pipped to the win by Michael Cooper in his McLaren 570S. The final point of note that at the weekend at VIR in the GT World Challenge America paddock is a new class called the Sports Car Club, which involves some extraordinary machines. Now, at the moment, it only involves the Porsche GT2 RS Club Sport. And if you're a Porsche fan, you'll be aware of this absolute monster of a machine. It was originally conceived to be a bit of basically a track day special, taking the GT2 RS, which is already a bonkers fast road car, and making it even faster and kind of preparing it for the track. So the GT2 RS Club Sport has 700 horsepower, which, to put in perspective, is about 200 horsepower more than a GT3 car. It's a 3.8 litre flat six twin turbo machine, and in general, it's very similar to the GT2 RS road car, but just stripped out and ready to go racing. And the concept with the Sports Car Club is that amateur drivers only compete in the class over a 40-minute sprint race. But interestingly, they're out on track at the same time as the GT3 GT3 runners. And at VIR, it was really interesting to see the kind of contrast between the two vehicles, because the GT3 cars, they've got so much more aerodynamics and lots more cornering performance. But in a straight line, these GT2 RS Club Sports are absolute dragsters, and they were actually clicking over 180 miles an hour at the end of the back straight coming into the roller coaster turn, which is mildly terrifying, I'll be honest. But a brilliant concept, getting basically Stefan Rattel, the series organizer, basically trying to create a place where basically amateur drivers can bring their hypercar or track-only hypercar and bring it along to take part in this sports car club. And the first round, I have to say, was a resounding success, with Ryan Gates, former Time Attack driver in a Mitsubishi Evo Lancer, won both races in dominant fashion. Now, if one of these cars sounds quite exciting and rather nice, well, and no wonder, these GT2 RS Club Sports are sold to the public from Porsche. And if you would like to order one, when you're calling up Porsche Motorsport, you call up and ask for none other than Mark Lieb. Now, Mark Lieb is actually a 4-time Le Mans winner, all with Porsche, and only Hans Hermann has more wins with Porsche, with 5 wins. So Mark Lieb, he knows a thing or two about racing Porsches, and one of his roles within the company is the customer vehicle sales. So it's quite funny. Not only is it a thoroughbred car you're buying, you buy it from a thoroughbred driver as well. So that was VIR. They're off to Sonoma next time out in the Porsche GT Challenge America. And Luke, you were watching the Formula One paddock with keen eye this weekend, and the Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup were out running at the Red Bull Ring again. What did you see there?
Yeah, it's great to see them back. So basically, wherever the Formula One's going to be, you will have the Mobil 1 Supercup as a support. And it's a brilliant series, actually. You've had, likes of Earl Bamber, Bergmeister, Rene, all running that championship previously. So it sets a lot of the drivers up. If they perform well in this championship, it sets them up for future things. Obviously, there's a lot of people watching that series. But it was we've had 2 weeks of racing. Obviously, the Formula One's been at the Red Bull Ring for the last 2 weeks as a support race for the Formula One. And yeah, all in all, we've had a good couple of weeks of racing. The Lechner Racing, otherwise known as the pink BWT cars. I think in Formula One it's the Racing Point that run that, very familiar to fans. They've taken 2 wins out of the 2 races with both their drivers. So the week previously, Jackson Evans took the victory with his teammate Dylan Pereira in P2. And then coming to this weekend, it was a bit of a drama, or I should say probably no dramas. They set to qualify on a Saturday, the same as Formula One. And they had to kind of wait around while the guys at Formula One made a decision whether they would go out and qualify in the wet. So they sat and watched the Formula One cars go out, and then after a few hours be told that they wouldn't be qualifying, and maybe they'll see how it goes on the Sunday morning. Which I was a little bit gutted, actually. I wanted to see those Porsches go out and put some laps in the wet, maybe outshine the Formula One cars as well. But they didn't. They qualified on the Sunday morning, so it was a busy day for all the drivers. And yeah, it was Guven, who we all know very well, who qualified on P1. And in terms of the race, I think every car into turn 1 went wide. A similar thing in Formula One, all up into the first corner. And it was Pierre who was challenging for the lead on Guven, with Larry Tenvord in P3. Now, those 3 drivers, anyone who's a sim racing fan will know that they've been competing in the iRacing Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup Virtual Edition. And the last couple of months, and there's been some very good racing. I think it was Tenvord who actually won the championship virtually. So it was kind of nice to see them kind of reignite that battle, but in the real world, with this time Dylan Pereira taking the lead. It was a good move as well that he took for the lead. He actually touched the grass, and both me and you know, Peter, we've driven those cars virtually at least. That when you touch the grass in a 911 GT3 Cup, usually you can't get it back, but he managed to keep it hold and somehow took the lead off of Guven. And there was also another surprise with Kohler, who surprised many people in qualifying actually. He put up a good fight all the way till the end with 10 Vord in the later stages and to take P4. And I spoke to a few of the drivers afterwards, and similar to Formula 1 at the Red Bull Ring, they were struggling with the black and white flags and kind of running wide and then getting told that if they do that again, they'll be given a 10-second penalty. I think it was similar for the F1 races. So a lot of them had to manage that. And even Dylan Pierre said the week prior he'd struggled with pushing the car a little bit too much, and then you've kind of got to back off. But it was good. It was a good race. They're set to go to the Hungaroring with Formula 1, so they'll be all making their way across today and tomorrow, and then we'll have some practice on Friday, and then hopefully qualifying on the Saturday, and weather permitting, we'll go racing again on Sunday. But for the opening 2 rounds, you've got the likes of Larry Ten Voord, Dylan Pierre, Jackson Evans, Guven, all kind of challenging for that top spot. There's some young drivers as well. To mention Matteo Lorena, who's new to the series, and I believe he's probably one of the youngest drivers at 16 to compete in the championship. So there's a mixed bag. There's some very, very young youngsters out there who are kind of thrown into the deep end, but it was some brilliant racing to watch at the weekend. So I'm looking forward to keeping tabs on that. And for a lot of the English fans, I'm not sure about the rest of Europe, you can watch the race at least on Sky Sports. It's on, I think it's a couple of hours before the actual Formula 1 race. Would highly recommend it. They're 20-minute races and a very good watch. And finally on the Mobil 1, actually, I caught up with Dylan Pierre today just to speak to him about the last 2 races. So we'll head over to that interview, and obviously Dylan's on the move at the minute, going from the Red Bull Ring to the Hungaroring. So the quality is not great. I think I caught him as he was travelling across, but we'll bear with us on that interview. It's a good listen and a good insight for that. So Dylan, very warm welcome to the podcast. For the fans listening at home, can you just kind of give us an update? Whereabouts are you now? Obviously, you've been in Austria the last week for the races. I'm assuming you're still in Europe and then getting ready to travel to the Hungaroring.
Yeah, we were here now 2 weeks, or almost 3 weeks in Austria. And now we go on Wednesday. We go to Hungaroring because we wait a bit more here in Austria because the corona virus in Hungaroring is a bit worse than here in Austria, so safe to stay a bit longer here and then go to Hungaroring.
So an obvious place to start. Obviously, we're back racing. Obviously, what the fans wanted to see, what the drivers wanted. You've had 2 races there at the Red Bull Ring. How is it returning to racing? We've had a long period off while the whole world's been in lockdown. How was it for you going back to that race last week, and obviously the race at the weekend as well?
Yeah, so during the lockdown we are doing a lot of virtual things. So all the racing drivers in the Porsche Mobil Supercup were doing a virtual edition actually, and went quite well also from there. So 3 at the end of the championship. But I was really happy again to the car and really feel all the sensations you get, all the adrenaline forces, and it's just different. I really enjoyed more to back in the racing car. Unfortunately, there's no fans, so it makes a bit of a difference. When you arrive to the racetrack, you don't see them anymore. You don't have to sign autographs anymore live. So it's a bit weird when you arrive to the racetrack, but as soon as you are in the car, you have to do your same job than normally. So so for me, it was really great to be back in the race.
Yeah, and you touched on it there a little bit. Obviously, there's some changes in the paddocks. Obviously, there's a lot of protocols in place for the COVID-19. I've seen quite a few people having the tests. If I'm honest, it doesn't look that pleasant. Can you kind of tell us what protocols are in place around the paddock? What's changed behind the scenes, probably that the fans don't see.
Yeah, first of all, when you arrive to the racetrack, so you have to have already a test so that you are negative. So if you don't have that, you cannot even enter the racetrack. Then you have like a badge to get into the racetrack, and every time you test negative, then you're allowed to get in. As soon as your test is positive, they block your badge, and you cannot even enter the paddock or enter the racetrack. So actually, that's quite sure, but we have to do every third day do a test on the racetrack, or it doesn't matter. And then they adjust your barcode on this badge so that you can always enter the racetrack if you're negative on COVID. So it's quite secure, and we have always, when we are on the racetrack, every time we have like subgroup. Also in the team we have only I'm with my mechanic and one driver, another driver, and 2 engineers in one subgroup. Them I can be without mask, and we started the rest of the team or with all the other first people there. I have to wear masks and keep my distance. And, so it's quite at the beginning quite adaptive. You have to adapt to that, but I think at the end we are lucky that we can race.
And talking about the racing, it's been a good couple of weeks for you. P2, the first race, and then obviously took the victory at the weekend. Through them 2 races, obviously the week prior, Jackson Evans, your teammate, took the win. He was very close behind in second for that. Just talk us through them 2 races.
Yeah, so first of all, I was really expecting that we be so strong this year. So I was thinking if it would be so at the end of the year would be already quite nice. But starting like this is really nice. And first race, already free practice. I put the car on EP1, so I was really happy about that because it gives you a lot of confidence. So I went into qualifying. My fastest lap was cancelled, so I had to start from E4 instead of P2. But at the end, I think I did a really good start and was already in P2 after turn 4. And then I was pushing hard to close the gap to Jackson. And then I got a warning flag already, like lap 4 or 5, I think, about track limits. So I have to be really careful and not going over the track limits again. Now they would penalize. So being really careful and not pushing that hard. I was trying to close the gap still, but possible without taking a bit much the track. So, and then I said, okay, take just a second place. It's already good to start the season with and getting a lot of points. And also for the team was great. We did already P1, P2, P3. So it was a podium of Flashner Racing was great for us. So we knew the cars are good, the setup was fine. So we went quite positive for the second race. Also there in the second round, I was P1 in free practice. So again, gave me a lot of confidence for qualifying. On Saturday, it was raining a lot, so we couldn't do a qualifying. So we were doing the qualifying then on Sunday morning. And Sunday morning, I did qualifying, but my fastest lap was some dirt, turn 6 inside. So I lost 1.5 tenths, which cost me probably the pole position. But P3 at the end, I was still quite happy about that because I knew the pace the pace would be good in the race because we changed some things on the car which made me feel a lot more comfortable and which I could even push harder. So I was really confident. Race start was mega for me. Already in turn 1 I was P2 and we been fighting for P1 and I saw already behind me that Vorder was fighting Graham Köhler in the first 2 laps. So it gave me a little bit of a gap behind me. so that I could comfortably fight against to take the lead. It works. Also, if the maneuver was a bit crazy, a bit tricky, because I had to go over the grass, stay flat out to pass him, but it worked out at the end. And, after that, my pace was incredibly good, and I just pulled the gap from 3.7 seconds.
Yeah, it was a good victory. Congratulations on that. You mentioned it there, just going back to the qualifying, which was obviously set to be on the Saturday. I guess that was kind of a lot of waiting around, kind of seeing what the F1 cars were going to do, if they was going to go out. For you, was it just wanting to get out there? Would you have been happy to go out in the rain, or was it the better situation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me it was not a big problem because I was already P1 in free practice. So if they would cancel the qualifying, I would still on pole. So I was quite relaxed, let's say. But so they wanted to start the qualifying also in the rain. But I wasn't sure if we would be fast in the rain or not. So I would prefer actually do the qualifying and try. But at the end, you always have to fast, do your best, and also it be raining. But at the end, we should be able to start at 7:30 in the evening to do qualifying. But then the Formula 2 race was suspended, also because of the rain, and they started later. So we couldn't race anymore because at 8 o'clock there was noise. So that's why then they put the qualifying for the next morning.
And looking forward to the Hungaroring this weekend. Is that a track you're familiar with? Are you confident? Obviously, you'll be taking a nice points for the team and yourself into that. So how's it looking for the weekend?
Yeah, so after the first testing days at Red Bull Ring, we went straight to also Hungaroring to do some testing. It went quite well, actually, straight from. Felt quite confident with the car. Also, we did some setup changes to try everything out, and for sure, when the Formula 1 rubber is down, the car will be a bit different, and we have still to adapt the setup on that. But I think I feel quite comfortable also on that track. So, but the weather forecast is a bit weird, so we didn't know if it will be raining on Friday and Saturday. So we'll be tricky again. I think it will not rain that much then, probably in Spielberg. Also, if it's raining, probably we'll do that qualifying in rain. Would be not so good for us because we were training a lot on dry track. But I think, I told before already, we have to do our best. And I think the qualifying quite important in Budapest because it's quite a difficult track to overtake.
And just going back to the lockdown, I know we briefly mentioned about the sim racing. I know you've done quite a bit whilst the whole of the world's been on lockdown. Obviously, there was the Porsche Mobil won virtual Supercup, and obviously racing against familiar faces with Ford and Guven. It was quite spicy at the front of the pack, challenging through the virtual world. Obviously, a lot of people have kind of moved over to sim racing. Can you kind of give your experiences on how it differs and kind of how it compares at the same time to the real thing?
Yeah, for sure. It's a big difference is that you can test how much you want. So normally, like you go to a racetrack like 1-2 days, and then you wait like for 1 month, and then it's your race. That's different. So in sim racing, you can train every day how much you want, also 10 hours a day if you want, and that's what we were also doing more or less. I was doing 4 or 5 hours a day before the race to train, because I think everyone knows at the front was quite tough with time. So every 10th of a second was important, and everyone was training hard, and because it was also for fun for sure, but also was going for prize money. So everyone was trying to do their best. But then feeling-wise, you have the braking. It's a bit different. You don't have the sensation, the G-force when you go on the brakes. You don't have the acceleration G-force. You don't have the side G-force. So it's a bit different. You don't have those things. And also, you can have simulators who can simulate those things, but it's still always a bit And then also, if you question with someone, it doesn't really matter. So you just press escape and that's done. On real life, it's a bit different. I think if you clash with someone, first of all, you have to open your wallet and pay those crashes, and maybe even you can hurt yourself. So some of the drivers are thinking twice of life, sim racing not. And so it was a lot more difficult to always finish the races on points without crashing. And I think, but it still was fun times. I think 4 rounds also on virtual. Was really happy about that because I was already driving 1 year before the lockdown started. I was already driving a lot of, and it helped me out at the end. And I think I was really happy that I could finish in the top 3 in this season. It shows me that I'm also able to do some sim racing, and also after that I was able to join a team on sim racing team, and also do some 24 hours Le Mans or other races with them. And it's always fun to race a bit without a big real life pressure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you as well about that, Dylan. 24 hours of Le Mans virtual, which was on a different platform. Obviously, the virtual Supercup's on iRacing. The Le Mans virtual was on R Factor. Some big names in that race. How did you find that? Was it, obviously the dream probably is to do the real thing. I can imagine it was an experience even to do a virtual Le Mans 24 hour.
I was really lucky that I was also doing R Factor 2 before Le Mans. So I was quite used to the track, and also the car was, because also I was not supposed to drive it until just 3 days before the race. So it was quite a quick join to the team at the end. So we were training the last 3 days. Me and my teammate Dennis Olsen was training more or less almost 10 hours a day just to get speed we needed to, because the sim racer and the real racers who were present were not really slow. At the end, we improved a lot on setup, and we tried at least top 5, but unfortunately we were a bit had some crashes, and but at the end it was really nice to drive against Formula 1 driver, famous drivers, I think it's always nice to be there, and I think everyone saw the broadcast. It was quite professional. It felt like you were driving more or less the real one. Unfortunately, I never drove the real one, but I think how they did the broadcast was mega.
Yeah, I think it got a lot of comments of how well it was put together. They did a very good job indeed. And as I mentioned in yourself, I'm sure the dream is to do the real 24 hours, and kind of that ties into looking forward for this season. Hopefully you take the championship, and then kind of what are you looking for the future? Would it be a few seasons in the Supercup? Obviously, potential maybe do a Le Mans in the future. What have you kind of got your eyes set on?
For the moment, I'm not quite sure. For sure, it's a big dream is to win the Supercup. Already like 5 years ago when I started to do Supercup, I said if I can win once this mega champion would be fantastic. And now leading the championship, it's just great. And I just will try to do my best to be at the end top step. After that, for sure, there will be a lot of doors will be open. But for sure, it's a big dream for every driver, more or less. Then to do a 24-hour Le Mans or 24-hour Nürburgring and for Spa. So that's 3 races I absolutely wants to do once in my life. And that with a winning, let's see, a team who are able to win. So that's one of my aims, which I want still to do. And I think the big aim is to be a factory driver. So at the end, that's my aim. I have to try to do my best. If I would win the Porsche Mobil Supercup, it will probably help me a lot. to get closer to my dreams.
Yeah, and I'm sure it isn't going unnoticed as well. Your performances in the Supercup. Dylan, I'm going to leave you there. I know you've got a busy week getting ready for the Hungaroring, a lot of testing, and then obviously practice and qualifying. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I hope you have a good race at the weekend, and hopefully take all the points available.
I hope so. I will try my best, and hopefully get a lot of points for the champion.
Thanks, Dylan.
So that was Dylan Pereira. Thank you very much to him for making the time to speak to us here on the Porsche Sport podcast to tell us about his experience at the weekend in the Mobil 1 Super Cup at the Red Bull Ring. So back on home soil, the Porsche Club of Great Britain got their motorsport activity started for the first time in 2020 at the fantastic Snetterton circuit in Norfolk. Snetterton, an amazing layout, the MSV circuit owned by Jonathan Palmer with corner names like Williams and Brundles. Even Murray's named after Murray Walker, the final corner named after Murray Walker. And the Porsche Club of Great Britain have such a thriving section or community for club motorsport, and there was plenty going on there. And Luke, you were keeping a keen eye on what was going on there. What did you see this weekend at Snetterton for our Porsche Club of Great Britain folks?
Yeah, what a great weekend for Snetterton. If you were a fan, it's a shame you couldn't be there in Norfolk. There was some good racing and a lot of Porsches on show actually this weekend. And yeah, the Porsche Club Championship. I think here at PorscheSport, we kind of pride ourselves on that we can cover everything from right at the top, from your Formula E, your Mobile 1 and your endurance racing, and still kind of report on the club level. So it was good. I was listening in. We had a photographer there. Obviously, given the COVID-19 regulations, we were kind of restricted with how many people you can take to the circuit. So I've kind of relied on my information from some of the people who were there. I listened to the live stream, the audio stream, and obviously we have the race report afterwards. But yeah, great to have Club Championship back as well as every other racing. And the Porsche Club of Great Britain, it's fantastic for anyone who hasn't watched it. It's very short races but very competitive. You've got 3 classes of cars. So you've got your main class, then you've got your Boxsters, and then you've got your Class 3, which I believe, maybe someone might correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Boxsters with road tyres or wet tyres, you would class. So you've got 3 classes all racing for 20 minutes around a ton of British circuits. And no different for the opening rounds this weekend. We had two rounds. James Coley took the race win for round 1 of the races, and then in Class 2, as I mentioned with the Boxsters, you had James Coleman, who took the win for that one. Mackay, who took second, who we both know very well, Peter. We've raced virtually with him. And Ross Morris, who one of the Strasser drivers, who was the reigning champion from last year. He took third in the Class 3. I will quickly touch on. It was a double win for Paul Simpson, and he was a debutant as well. So he took both race 1 and race 2. So well done to Paul on that, for new to the series. And into race 2, Simon Clark, who actually won or was set to win the championship last year, and he was disqualified on an accidental infringement. I don't know everything about that, but unfortunately he finished the season on the most points, but it was taken off him at the last. But he took a lot of pressure from James Coleman in the second race. Brilliant racing from what I'm told between them two, but P1 actually went to James Coleman in the end, with Simon Clark taking second. And another Strasser driver and a big veteran to the series, Pete Morris. I think he's a multiple champion. He's been there probably almost as long as the championships existed. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. He took the final podium position in the Class 1. In Class 2, we had let me check I've got this right. Hopefully I've got this right. We had a 10-second penalty for James Coleman. I don't know if my notes are correct on that. I will double check that. For starting out of position, and that's all I got told, so I'm not entirely sure how that happens. But yeah, a 10-second penalty, which gave the win to Matt Carl Henney for race 2. P2 for Coleman, and P3 again the reigning champion Ross Morris from Strasser. So yeah, it's a brilliant series. Hopefully, myself and you, Peter, can get to some of these rounds once kind of the regulations are dropped a little bit, because it's brilliant, and there's some great support races as well. So they'll be back out at Alton Park on July the 25th. So that'll be set. And it wasn't just the Porsche Club that we had this weekend at Snetterton. We also had the first round of the new Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain. Let me just get my notes for that. And yes, to give it its full name, it's the Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge GB. So a nice sponsor there. I wonder if they all get the holidays through that as well. It won't be too bad. But yeah, you've got 13 basically identical 718 Cayman GT4s, 3.8 litre flat six engines, 425 brake horsepower. And they're beautiful as well. I'm sure you'll agree, Peter. They're a nice car to look at, and there were some nice liveries for the opening round. And similar to the Porsche Club, we had two 20-minute rounds, a little bit different. They have their qualifying on the Saturday, and then they have their two races on the Sunday. And it's split into two categories. So you've got a Pro class and an AM class, and there's some familiar names in this for a new series as well. We've got the likes of James Doran, Ethan Hawkey, who we will know his sister is Esme Hawkey, who races in the Porsche Carrera Cup. Tom Jackson, and I have to say for the opening qualifying there was 4 attempts that covered the top 5 cars. And I think with a new series, you always can kind of think, is it going to be really competitive? Is there going to be one person that kind of runs away with it? But it doesn't look likely for this series. We've that close. But yeah, so it was brilliant weather as well. And for race 1, it was Tom Jackson who crossed the line in first, but he was deemed to have jumped start, and he was handed a 10-second penalty. So they was handing him out quite a lot at Snetterton this weekend, which handed P1 to James Dorling, P2 Theo Edgerton, and P3 Archie Hamilton, who, if anyone's heard of Archie Hamilton, he has a ridiculous amount of followers on Instagram as well. I think you would class him as a influencer, but you can't deny he's also a very good racer, and I'm pretty sure if my facts are correct, he's got his dad and his granddad are both very good racers themselves with some good history. And for race 2, you basically, your grid is made up of your race 1, so it would be them 3 that would take the start. We only had 3 retirements as well over the 2 races, all coming in the second race. Unfortunately, Ethan Hawkey lost a lot of fluid, which thankfully didn't put many other people off. He had to retire. Alex Toft-Jones had damage and he had to retire, and Edgerton had a puncture. But in the final results, and again it was very close racing. I'd be keen to see some actual video footage of that just from the audio. And when a commentator can make a race sound very good, and he was very excited as well. We had James Dorling again taking P1. This time it was Tom Jackson who finally got onto a podium after P1 was taken from round 1. He got P2, and again Archie Hamilton took P3. So it was a brilliant series. I think it kind of separates from the Porsche Club going forward into a different support races, but I will certainly be keeping my eyes on that. It was a very good race, and then finally there was one more race at Snetterton. I did say it was jam packed. We also had the GT Cup return, and there was a couple of notable performances. Sam Randon in the GTB class in the Team Hard Porsche put in a brilliant performance, and I just thought I would give him a mention because he was up there with the top guys in fighting in the GTC and GTB class, and I believe that also was his debut for Team Hard, so he put in a stellar performance there, and hopefully we'll keep track on the GT Cups. That also looks like it's going to be an interesting series. But yeah, brilliant to have some racing back on home soil. I think the only thing we're missing now is to have the fans back, and we're in for a treat this season. It's going to be jam packed. They're going to squeeze most of them. I think are going to squeeze 8 rounds into 10 weeks. So we're going to be all over the place. The podcast is going to be trying to cover all of these, but we can't complain. I'm glad we've got racing back this year. And for Porsche, But from a club level all the way up, all the way up to your GT racing, it looks set to be quite dominant this year. So I'm looking forward to it.
It certainly will. And I have to say, just to mention about the new Sprint Cup in the UK, I think that's an excellent concept from Porsche, using the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 MR as a base car for that. It's a great piece of kit, and I was hearing that you can actually both buy and service the car at your local Porsche centre, just like you can with the road car, and it's incredibly closely linked to the 718 GT4 road car. But one thing that the race car has, which is completely unique to any other car in the world, is that it's the first ever production race car to feature body parts that are made of natural fibre composite materials. So that's a new innovation that Porsche have developed. And I was reading a little bit about it, and it's probably for a whole season, apparently it's about half the cost of doing a season in Carrera Cup. And the car itself is arguably a little bit more friendly. It's a mid-engine machine, as the Cayman always is, but it has anti-lock brakes, traction control, ESC. So if you're a new driver but you want to race a modern Porsche, it's a really, really good initiative, and there's a good support network around with Porsche Motorsport as well. So it's a car that we see competing in global GT4 racing as well, and brilliant to see a sprint format available in the UK as well, because as we know, we are absolutely blessed with top circuits here in the UK. So finally, let's talk about another new initiative in the Porsche Club of Great Britain, which has been sim racing. Now, over the last few months, of course, during global lockdowns and things like that, motorsport has had to really think quickly to try and maintain fan engagement, and also to keep all of the racing drivers busy as well. Now, even prior to the COVID-19 lockdown here in 2020, sim racing, online e-racing, esports, whatever you want to call it, basically, in the past, it would have been a PlayStation or Xbox or something like that. But nowadays, it's a lot more advanced, and sim racing is something that's grown in popularity for a couple of years now. And the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown and everybody forced to stay at home has just accelerated that progression at an exponential rate. And we're very lucky in motorsport because it's one of the very few, if the only, sport that can be so closely replicated in the virtual sense. Even for motorcycle racing, you obviously can't replicate the motorcycle in your home, in your living room. You can't kick a football virtually in your living room, and so on. There's many examples. But in sim racing, the level of technology, both in hardware and software, etc., is just incredible. The pedals, you now have hydraulic pedals which simulate the feel of a real accelerator, brake, clutch. The wheel, you have things called direct drive wheels, which give an incredibly realistic sensation of a racing steering wheel. You'll have monitors which wrap around the driver, 3 monitors around, so you've got a kind of the feeling of being inside the car. And the actual software that's available, programs particularly like iRacing, which laser scan every track on the service and also laser scan every car. So the look, the feel, the noise is incredibly realistic. And, I think when you've got Formula One drivers like Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, who are really strong advocates of sim racing, and Charles Leclerc as well, actually, it says a lot of where we're going. So for Porsche Club of Great Britain at the beginning of this year, knew that it was going to be quite a significant delay to have till they got back racing again. And as we said, here we are in the middle of July, and that's us just getting started, the Porsche Club of Great Britain series out at Snetterton. So a couple of members in the Porsche Club, Mark Phillips and Carl Sharkey, basically got their heads together and decided to get a few drivers together to basically start a sim racing paddock within the Porsche Club of Great Britain. And I actually had the good fortune to be able to commentate. In fact, it wasn't actually a commentate, it was actually a highlights voiceover of the first ever Porsche Club of Great Britain sim race, which was a field of, I think, 11 or 12 Cayman GT4s at Lime Rock Park for a half an hour race. And a great race it was indeed, won by Austin Greatorex. And from that point on, it has just grown so quickly. By May, we were doing a charity 12-hour race, and now there is a fully fledged, effectively virtual Carrera Cup championship in the Porsche Club of Great Britain. And throughout the last 6 or 7 weeks, we've been seeing an incredibly competitive and jam-packed grid of cars, over 20 cars in every single race we've had, taking part in races at Zandvoort, at Silverstone. We've had, where else have we gone to? We've gone to Laguna Seca and many others that I can't quite remember at this stage. So the Porsche Club of Great Britain sim racing has been a really good initiative for the club. It's been I've had the good fortune to be able to commentate on all of the races live on Sim Racers World with my colleagues Jack Werrell and Chaz Draycott, and that has been a whole bunch of fun as well. And all the races are broadcast every Sunday live on YouTube at 1:30 UK time. And then, of course, they live on YouTube, so you can go back and watch them whenever you want. So it's an amazing initiative. And also, the thing I love about it is that Club Motorsport, we talked a lot about the Porsche Club of Great Britain on this episode, and Club Motorsport obviously is still thriving and is still doing well. However, the costs involved in any form of motorsport are always going to be high. That's always been the case, and it always will be. But sim racing provides a cost-effective alternative to be able to go racing. So you've not got, obviously, your travel accommodation costs. You're obviously buying the car, running it, and the potential of crash damage as well. And we have people in the Porsche Club of Great Britain where some of the members have moved abroad. We have one member, Gavin Halls, who races in Bahrain. So you've got me in Perth commentating. We've got him in Bahrain. We've got people all over the world racing on the same platform. And what a joy it is. So in terms of competition, well, we've had one standout driver who's competed in every race so far in the series, and that has been Ryan Parkins. And Ryan, actually, his day job is he works in the film industry, but I don't know. Well, he's a secret racing driver because his speed behind the wheel of his white and red Porsche 911 Cup car in this iRacing series with the Porsche Club of Great Britain has been absolutely fantastic. And slowly but surely, he's built up a really strong championship lead. And he goes into the final 2 rounds of the championship with a 79-point lead. Now, there is only a maximum of 100 points left on the table, and after this weekend's race at Spa-Francorchamps, he only needs a 50-point gap on Carl Sharkey going into the final rounds at Brands Hatch. So Ryan Parkins has one hand firmly on the trophy. However, he did have a bit of company on Sunday at Silverstone with the return of Matthew Dorrington. And Matthew Dorrington has been, well, he's been truly the standout driver in Porsche Club of Great Britain. But Matthew actually has a company called Midas Simulations and sells sim racing equipment via his online shop. And as you can imagine, he's been very busy the last little while. So he's had to miss a lot of rounds going out and driving around and delivering and installing sim equipment for his customers. But he came back for the race on Sunday at Silverstone, and in race one, won from pole position, leading a very strong drive as well from Ryan Parkins in second place, with our very own PorscheSport's very own caravan Carl Sharkey coming home in third place. Now, PorscheSport actually have 3 drivers in this series. We have Carl Sharkey, as I've mentioned, Gavin over in Bahrain, and Luke, you are one of these PorscheSport drivers as well, aren't you? Tell us about your weekend from the driver's seat on Sunday.
Yeah, just kind of initially what you were saying there about the sim racing as well. It has really gained a lot of momentum in this lockdown. And as you said, it's probably only one of the sports that you can kind of replicate. Although I would like to see you to do British Superbikes in your living room, as you mentioned. Maybe get a 996 Ducati in there. But yeah, it's the only thing you can replicate. And for me, you can go watch Lawrence Vantor or one of your favourite Porsche drivers go around Daytona, and then you can do it yourself. And you can't do that in any other sport. You can basically, all right, you don't have the same feeling, you're not actually sat in the car, but you can almost replicate and copy what some of those drivers are doing. So it's been brilliant. I've always been a big fan of the sim racing, and for me, it's grown massively over the lockdown. What really did it for me is when you've got the likes of John Hindhaugh from Radio Le Mans actually commentating on sim racing. For anybody who turns around to me and says, "Oh, it's not real racing," no one takes it seriously. Well, if you've got arguably the voice of motorsport commentating on it, then it must be doing something right. But yeah, for me, I kind of entered the championship definitely as a rookie. I'm only just getting into iRacing and kind of taking it seriously and learning the track. So for me, it's some of these drivers may have raced the track before. I'm learning the track the week of the race, and just trying to get points on the board. I'm juggling my own job and doing stuff with Porsche Sport. So inevitably you miss some rounds, as you do in real motorsport in club level. Not everybody can make those races, but it's been brilliant. And for me, the progression of all the drivers, myself and the rest of the field, you've had your front runners, Austin and Carl Sharkey, Ryan Parkins, Matt Henny, we mentioned, who's actually races in the Porsche Club real life, Matthew Dorrington. They've been there at the front. And then the rest of us have kind of been learning the ropes, but you've now got some of the mid pack and the back pack at the start of the season now challenging up there at the front, and just learning the racing, and it's been brilliant and great for the club, and all aspects of sim racing. We've had some fantastic events. We've had the virtual Le Mans series on as well. So yeah, I think it's done really good, and for anybody who's not into sim racing, I would highly recommend it. It's not cheap, but it's probably the cheapest form of motorsport you're going to get. But for me, I think I need to update some of my equipment. I'm not going to blame my slowness on all the equipment, but I feel like my pedals could do with updating, and I might gain a few temps then into braking. But yeah, I've fully enjoyed it, and season 2 looks really busy. There's more people wanting to come on board. So I don't know what the guys are going to have a bit of a headache fitting everybody in. Maybe we run 2 classes. See what the general feel is of the club. But yeah, I can't fault it. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And the thing is, for me, I've been in a really lucky position as a commentator as well, is because I've been able to get to know everyone in the league by being we kind of have a big kind of group chat on Discord, and you get to know all the characters. And actually, from a commentator's perspective, for me, that's the dream, to be able to get those backstories. One of my kind of commentary idols is actually a rugby commentator, a guy called Bill McLaren. You might remember him commentating on rugby as a great Scot, and what he brought to the table was he really got to know who the players were as people rather than just as rugby players. And I think that was what a lot of casual viewers really related to. So I think that's something that I've taken away a lot, is being a part of the kind of community. And one thing that I always try to get across in the broadcast about the Porsche Club Sim Racing is that the fastest drivers, guys like Matthew Dorrington, Gavin Halls, Ryan Parkins, they're all actively offering their time to help others in the community to get better. And they do a track walk every Wednesday night. They do coaching for anybody that wants it. They don't charge for it. And a lot of these guys could do, and a lot do on the internet as well. But they don't, and they do it for the good of the community. And it's amazing. We've been watching it in the commentary box as well, Luke, is that the gap between top and bottom has shrunk massively over the time, and that is only because of the effort that's been put in by the faster drivers. And in many other forms of motorsport, the faster drivers come in, roll their car out the trailer, put it on pole, win, and then go home, and that's the end of it. But in the sim racing world, there is a real camaraderie around of it. I'm sure you've seen that from your seat as well.
Yeah, the club, on a virtual world has grown, and yeah, everyone helping everyone, as you mentioned, the likes of Matthew and Gavin. They do a track walk every week, a virtual track walk where we can go into Discord, and they'll stream it, and you can go into iRacing, and you can go through the corners with them. They'll tell them their braking points and offer some advice where maybe you should start braking and build up to certain places. And that's fantastic. It's very competitive, the league, but you've also got that camaraderie between them all. And that's club racing for me, virtual and real life. It's having that group of people. You know, in the real world, you're travelling around to all these different circuits. You've kind of got to get on with a lot of the people you're with, and it's a fantastic group of people. And I'm looking forward to next season. It's even more competitive. I think a lot of us will, on the off season, try and up his skills a little bit, and maybe, you never know, put a new challenge into the top 5 guys going from there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting. We've obviously got a big waiting list. I can't believe we've got a waiting list already, just a couple of months into the life of the paddock. And I think you make a good point about a class system. I think bringing the GT4 Cayman in for some of the less experienced guys could really make a big difference, or perhaps even having their own race as well. So that's Porsche Club of Great Britain Sim Racing. We'll talk a lot about that as well on the show over the coming weeks as well. Finally, let's cap off what to expect this weekend's racing. We're recording this on the 14th of July, so Tuesday. Coming up this weekend, we've got 3 fantastic series of racing at the very top level of motorsport. We've talked quite a lot about Mobil 1's Supercup, which follows the Formula 1 circus around the world. They will be making the trip over the Austrian border to Hungary for a round at the amazing Hungaroring, one of the finest circuits in the world. That will be a real challenge at the wheel of those 911 GT3 Cup cars. I have to say, I'll be very biased. My favourite series, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in North America. They are off to the home of American endurance sports car racing, Sebring. Sebring is just drowning in history. There's just so many stories of that incredible circuit. Former military airbase. Most of the track is still concrete. It's an amazing place. Very, very vicious circuit. Very bumpy. And we're going to see all 4 classes of IMSA back. We raced at Daytona a couple of weeks ago with just the DPI, which is the top prototype class, the GTLM, which is kind of like the factory GT cars where Porsche run, and also the GT Daytona, which is the GT3 class. This time we've got those three classes, which will be joined by the LMP2 machines, which is kind of the Pro-Am prototype class as well. So it's going to be very busy on track at Sebring. That's on Saturday night. You can watch that live on YouTube. My apologies. You can watch it after the race, a couple of days after it happens, on YouTube, on the IMSA YouTube channel, where all the IMSA races are published, which is I thoroughly encourage you to subscribe to that. It's a great channel, and that's with all the Radio Le Mans commentary as well.
I think actually, for British viewers, I'm not sure about. I think in America they may have to subscribe, but I think for British viewers, you can actually watch it live on IMSA TV.
That's correct. Yeah. That is absolutely right. Yes, I was just coming on to that. The IMSA.tv or on Radio Le Mans website as well. For pretty much anyone outside of the United States, pretty much, you can watch it for free. You're absolutely right, on IMSA.tv live stream. For those in the United States, thanks to the wonderful folks at Michelin have actually sponsored the NBC Track Pass for free. So normally you would have to pay for an NBC Track Pass, but in the circumstances of this year, Michelin, who are an incredible supporter of the IMSA paddock, they are actually sponsoring free NBC Track Passes for people in the United States to be able to watch the series, which I have to say you cannot commend Michelin enough for that support of the series, and thank you so much to them. Also, speaking of Michelin, the Michelin Pilot Challenge, where we will see the Porsche GT4s getting out, they race on Friday as well, and I really encourage you to watch that. It's really exciting. You've got Aston Martins, McLarens, Porsches, Ford Mustangs, Chevrolet Camaros, all racing together on an even playing field, which is really fantastic to watch. So that's IMSA to me, one of my favourite circuits of Sebring. And finally, we've got the ELMS at Paul Ricard, the European Le Mans Series getting started with a number of notable entries there. How do you know how fans can watch the ELMS? Is it an online stream, Luke?
Oh, good question. I'm pretty sure that is on YouTube, but I would have to double check that.
I think you're right, yes. Yeah. If you go into the ELMS website, just type in ELMS on Google and it'll come straight in, or European Le Mans Series. I would be very surprised if there were not a free live stream of the series. That's that race, and perhaps maybe Eurosport as well, potentially as well. So lots of Porsche racing going on this week. That's all we've got time for today at this action-packed first episode of the Porsche Sport podcast. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show on your chosen podcast provider, and then you'll get a very handy notification every time a new episode is published. And we've got some very exciting things up our sleeve for the coming weeks, with some interviews as well with some well-known drivers in the Porsche world, and some well-known tuners also in the Porsche world. Also, hopefully next week we will have my co-host Kat Impey joining me, but Luke, it's been a pleasure to join you and chat about Porsche racing over the last little while, and looking forward to next week.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, hopefully Kat will be back. I can go back to producing and just sit and report on the races and watch them. But thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
The Porsche Sport Podcast. Porsche Mobil 1 Supercup, Formula E, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, 24-hour series, Porsche Carrera Cup, Endurance Motorsports, British GT, Porsche Club Great Britain, Sim Racing. For more information, visit www.PorscheSport.com.